Namaskar, this is Midday Prime on DD India. News about the Sela Pass that will cut down the distance to the China border and other news items. But first, the big news at this hour. The Defence Minister Aryan Singh conducts the final breakthrough blast of the Sela Tunnel and he lauds the Border Roads Organization. This tunnel is expected to cut down the distance to China border from Tawang by about 10 kilometers. Defence Minister Aryan Singh addresses the SCO webinar on the role of women in armed forces and salutes the brave women from all SCO countries selflessly serving their respective countries. And he says that a large number of women have successfully broken the glass ceiling in a variety of professional spheres. In the domestic stock markets, the Sensex is at a record high and holding 61,000 mark. The Nifty also touches intraday record highs in afternoon trade. In international news, Japan dissolves the lower house of parliament ahead of the general elections. The country to go to the polls on October 31. The election to pit Prime Minister Fumio Kishida against an unpopular opposition, so they say. India beats the defending champions Maldives 3-1 to make it to the finals of the SAF Football Championship. The men in blue will face Nepal in the final on Saturday. So let's begin now with the big story. Defence Minister Aryan Singh today conducted virtually the final breakthrough blast of the Sela Tunnel in Arunachal Pradesh. So this tunnel, what does it do? It goes through Sela Pass and is expected to cut down the distance to China border from Tawang, and it will do so by 10 kilometers. The tunnel would also cut down at least an hour of travel time between the Army's 4 Corps headquarters as well as Tejpur in Assam and Tawang. The Sela Tunnel's construction work, it's expected to be completed by June of 2022. And speaking on the occasion, the Defence Minister lauded the Border Roads Organization. He said that the achievements of the BRO over the last few years, their achievements have been a topic of study worldwide.
रोड और ब्रिजेस, टनल्स और एयरफील्ड्स के कंस्ट्रक्शन के साथ रिमोट एरिया को जोड़ते हुए राष्ट्र की उन्नति में बॉर्डर रोड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन अपना एक अहम योगदान दे रहा है। जैसा कि हम सभी ने अभी वीडियो में भी देखा, बॉर्डर एरिया के कठिन और संकटग्रस्त इलाकों में जहां आमतौर पर लोग जाने से भी कतराते हैं, वहां पर बीआरओ के जवान सर्दी, गर्मी, बरसात और बर्फबारी को झेलते हुए मिलिट्री और सिविल पर्पज से रोड और ब्रिजेस का निर्माण करते हैं। पिछले कुछ सालों में तो बीआरओ ने ऐसी उपलब्धियां हासिल की हैं जो पूरी दुनिया के लिए स्टडी का, अध्ययन का एक विषय बन गई है।
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid the foundation stone of the Sela Tunnel on the 9th of February in 2019. And this project is being constructed, as we said, by the Border Roads Organization. It covers a total distance of 12.04 kilometers, which consists of 2 tunnels of 1,790 and 475 meters. And once completed, this would result in all-weather connectivity to Tawang and forward areas, the reduction in more than 1 hour of traveling time from Tejpur to Tawang. Also, travelers would be able to avoid the dangerous snow-covered Sela top at a height of 13,700 feet. The all-weather connectivity to Tawang would be a game-changer for the local population ahead of the Sela, apart from the much-required strategic edge for our security forces. Well, the Defence Minister Aryan Singh today flagged off a motorcycle expedition of the Border Roads Organization from the National War Memorial in the national capital. 75 BRO, Indian Army and GREF personnel will be participating in the BRO's motorcycle expedition, which will cover a distance of about 20,000 kilometers, passing through many states and union territories of the country. Addressing the event, the Defence Minister lauded the BRO for their commitment towards the country's security and socio-economic development, and he said that the organization is true to its motto and the source motto is Shramina Sarvam Sadhyam, and this means everything is achievable through hard work. Vishal Barrister now joins us for more on these stories. Well, Vishal, first let's look at this tunnel, how important it is for the armed forces, especially in an area, which we have seen now since there is there's growing tension in a sense with our northern neighbor, and it's important that these kind of activities are expedited.
And a very good afternoon to you, Mark, and let me tell you that this tunnel is going to play a major role as far as the national security is concerned. Along with it, it would also provide socio-economic development in the region, because I myself traveled to Tawang and it is very, very difficult. And moreover, this tunnel is an all-weather tunnel. I traveled with the Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, Pema Khandu. Pema Khandu belongs to Tawang, and during winters, Tawang is mostly cut from the rest of the country. Either you go by a chopper, and for that you have to travel from Itanagar to Guwahati, and from Guwahati to Tawang. That's a long ride. But this tunnel would not only provide access to the rest of the country, but it would be quite helpful to the armed forces, because given the situation that we have had on this border. And it is not only the Sela Tunnel which is coming up, but also BR has done a wonderful work in the past. We have seen how India can now boast of the longest tunnel at 10,000 feet, which is the Atal Tunnel, and
yes,
which was inaugurated by the Prime Minister some time back. And also Zojila Tunnel is also coming up very fast. So the focus of the Modi government is to provide a proper network accessibility, especially in the border areas, that would not only strengthen the international security, the national security, but also provide an economic and social development for the region.
Vishal, these are also engineering marvels, because we understand the terrain is extremely difficult, and also it's ecologically sensitive in that sense. So the point is that a lot of thought and goes in before this kind of an execution. So you can perhaps throw some light on that.
Well, absolutely. That is why I just spoke about the laudable work done by the Border Roads Organization, and Indian Army can boast of some of the very good works by the BRO. And as I mentioned, some of the examples like Atal Tunnel, which is the longest tunnel at the world's longest tunnel at the 10,000 feet height. Then you also have Zojila, which is coming up, and then Umlingla, which is also the highest motorable road there. So these are the roads that have been constructed by the BRO, and a lot of expertise goes into it. Yes, the environmental issues are there, but there the all well constructing and all weather tunnel is quite an achievement, because the winters are very harsh there. You have a lot of snowfall, especially in the region of Tawang. And as I was mentioning, that I myself had gone to Tawang with the Chief Minister, and yes, I was stuck for a week because of the snowfall, and the roads were blocked. So these are the issues that have been taken care of, and when you heard the Defense Minister congratulating the BRO, yes, which is the Border Roads Organization, definitely it means a lot, not only for the local population, but also for the armed forces. And given the situation that is developing time and again, especially with regard to China, this tunnel would play a major role, and it would be a shot in the arm in our armed forces.
So the BRO is at the forefront, in a sense, at the frontiers, and they are also they've given their best. We can see that the results are there for everyone to see. The question that comes to mind is that going forward, these are organizations that will have to be strengthened, and so what measures are being taken to basically modernize and to equip the BRO, to deal with this kind of a situation, the threat perception on the northern border in a better and a much faster manner.
Well, absolutely. When you are constructing roads, you need to be very, very careful, because these are the border regions, and BRO is not only constructing roads in the hilly terrain, but also in the deserts of Rajasthan, on the western sector also. So BRO is doing a wonderful job. It has to come up with new technology, and that has to be indigenous, because the Prime Minister has always been focusing on the indigenous technology, and has been very vocal about the local technology. So BRO is developing its own technology technology that is indigenous and at the same time which is cost worthy also, because cost is a major factor as far as building roads at that height is concerned, and creating an accessibility which is all weather. So all these things have to be taken care of, and today when this virtual thing has happened, so it would go a long way in serving the long demand of Tawang. Tawang is the place which is cut off during winters, and
Yes.
it's very difficult for the people to travel to other parts of Arunachal Pradesh. So not only the state would be connected, but also it would provide the much needed support to the armed forces, because this place is hardly 10 kilometers from the international borders with China.
Right, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Vishal Barrister, for those inputs. Moving on then to our developing story. Amid the court hearing of Aryan Khan's bail plea in the cruise ship drug case, Aryan Khan and others have been shifted to a common cell. As per the new COVID-19 guidelines, Aryan and others were kept in quarantine cell of Arthur Road Jail. On Wednesday, the NCB filed its submission to the bail plea and strongly opposed the bail application of all accused, citing that they are interlinked and they are a part of a larger nexus. Aryan Khan was arrested on October 2, along with 7 others, after the NCB raided an alleged drug party on a cruise ship. Today is the last day for the arrestees of the cruise ship drug case to remain in the NCB custody. The court had previously rejected their pleas for release, where they alleged illegal detention. This is the case of Aryan Khan today. The bail pleas of those who have been on that cruise ship and were arrested. They're coming up for hearing today. Yogesh Sheetal is with us for more. Yogesh, you fill us in with the details. This is a case that has, dominated the headlines because of the status of the people involved. But the question is that, the case that is being built up is one of a commercial use of the drugs. They were being brought in at at a much higher quantities than one would consider were basically involved with regular use of people. Yogesh, I'm told that you're not yet with us. Are you with us? Yogesh, can you hear me? Yeah, fill us in with the latest on what's happened at the court.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
See, the arguments are still underway. This is the lunch time, and after that the hearing will resume around 3 p.m. As of now, today, as far as major arguments are concerned, then section 37, basically the section 37 has been argued from the NCP, under which the stringent provision for bail in the NDPS Act, basically NDPS Act 1985, is highlighted, and the prosecution has been strongly objecting to bail of any of the accused, because since yesterday also we had seen that the prosecution was saying that under section 29 of NDPS Act there is a complete conspiracy has been hatched, and 50 to 20 people are included in those conspiracy. They are part of that conspiracy, and the link of that conspiracies go ahead to the international network. So basically the prosecution has been maintaining that all the accused are part of a larger conspiracy. That's why the case or the individual a person cannot be isolated in this case, and the entire accused should look at a part of that conspiracy. So whether it is Aryan Khan or whether it is Arwan Merchant or whether it is Munmun Dhanicha, none of the accused should be looked into an isolation case, but this should be seen as a comprehensive a group case, basically a syndicate kind of thing. So this is the basic argument by the NCP right now. After that, I think post lunch the arguments will be continuing from the prosecution side. Later on, once prosecution submits, then defense may argue later on also.
So what has the case been for the defense so far, that they are users of drugs and that they have basically should be in rehabilitation rather than in jail? Is that the kind of case that's being put forward?
That's right, two important things at this point in time. The first thing the defense has been maintaining that Aryan Khan was particularly talking about Aryan Khan, then he was just an invitee there. He was invited by his friends and he has nothing, the agency has recovered nothing from his custody. This is the core argument from the defense side if we say precisely about Aryan Khan. However, other accused like Arbaz Merchant, the agency has recovered contraband from his custody. So agency has also said that the quantity that has been basically recovered from the custody of Aryan Khan was for the use of Aryan Khan also, and these both accused were knowing themselves from one another for a long time, and they used to take this contraband. Also, since Achit Kumar, accused number 17, and also the other accused like Shivraj Harijan, these two accused, they were named by Aryan Khan and Arbaz Merchant. So they all are interconnected. As far as your second part of question are concerned, that how rehabilitated part, yes, the defense has also yesterday argued that in 2020, few years back, the government had reduced the imprisonment from 5 years to 1 year in some of the offences to encourage youngsters to leave or to just come back to the main line and face the addiction and also rehabilitate. Just to encourage rehabilitation, the government has introduced a new make a bit slow. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. But the arguments get a little more complex as a result of that, because the argument that can be put forward is that a person who is a user of drugs is not acting, does not have mens rea in a sense, does not have a guilty mind, because basically they are operating to fulfill a need, which is driven by the fact that they are consumers, they are addicts. The issue also comes to the question of quantity, which is where the case comes in here, where the conspiracy angle comes in. This is clearly a case where the people are there is a criminal intent to bring in a large quantity and to sell it and to have a rave party, which is a much larger angle. So I mean, whether the people were acting under the influence of drugs or whether they were acting with criminal intent is the ultimate case.
See, the presumption of mental state, basically it has been very clearly described in the NDPS Act and through different sections. If you see section 8C or section 20B or 27 or 35, this is section that have been applied to the accused in this case. Particularly, everything have been very, very clearly and very broadly mentioned. As far as other things are concerned, that you have also rightly said that how the different sections are here. As far as complexity part is concerned, the ASG Aryan Singh was arguing today that the more sections are likely to be added in this case, because this investigation is primarily at the very earliest stage, so more sections may be applied. Because the defense was saying that since there is no recovery from Aryan Khan, or he was not no recovery, he has no any that kind of past in terms of historical criminal background. Also, he cannot temper the evidence, because the defense is willing to file a proper submission, proper affidavit that certain whatever the conditions that have been given on the terms of bail, they are going to comply with them. So this is basically the defense has been arguing. But the thing is, NCB is saying that under section 29, this is a larger conspiracy. 29 has not been applied so far. But since it is a very early stage, so prosecution basically, NCB is saying that 29 or 37, these are the sections which are likely to be applied in this case. So this is making the entire arguments a bit complicated at this point in time.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Yogesh Sheetal, and we'll be coming back to you for more as the day passes. Now let's move on to our National Prime segment. The Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and the Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat took part in the SCO International webinar. This is on the role of women in the armed forces. Speaking at the event, he underlined that one must recognize and reinforce the role of women in the armed forces and in other wider contribution in all spheres of security and nation building.
The role of women in the armed forces, we must also recognize and reinforce their wider contribution in all spheres of security and nation building. Women have and will remain equal contributors in this fight, both within the armed forces and beyond them. In terms of their participation within the armed forces, we were amongst the few countries that took an early initiative in this regard.
Well, the Defence Minister also said that India's approach to the induction of women in the police, central police, paramilitary and armed forces has been progressive, and he added that India took the evolutionary path of moving from support to combat support, and this is within the armed forces.
Women are now being accepted for permanent commission and shall be commanding army units and battalions in near future. From next year, women shall be able to join our premier tri-service, pre-commissioning training institute, the National Defence Academy. Women have proved themselves in every field, competing and excelling wherever they have been involved. Many barriers have been broken, and many more imagined barriers should break in the years to come.
Well, speaking on terrorism, the Defence Minister stressed that the SCO as an organisation has unequivocally rejected terrorism in all its manifestations and all its forms.
The very concept of security is undergoing a paradigm shift. The changing character of war is bringing threats from our borders to within our society and amongst the people. Terrorism is just the most obvious and diabolical manifestation of this reality. It has been employed as a weapon of choice by non-state actors and irresponsible states allied for the furtherance of their political objectives. Shanghai Cooperation Organization as an organization has unequivocally rejected terrorism in all its manifestations and forms.
The Union Home Minister Amit Shah arrived on a day-long visit to Goa, and the Home Minister laid the foundation stone of the National Forensic Science University at Dharbandhora. Later, he is scheduled to inaugurate the transit campus of NFSU at Kuttiponda. During the visit, Amit Shah will also hold meetings with the party leaders. He will address a function and he will say also the Home Minister has said that the former Goa Chief Minister Manoj Parrikar gave the state its identity, and he will be remembered for providing one rank, one pension to the armed forces. He did so at an event earlier.
पर्रिकर जी को रक्षा मंत्री के नाते पूरा देश दो चीजों के लिए हमेशा याद करेगा, क्योंकि एक ऐसा बड़ा मसला था जो सालों से किसी की हिम्मत नहीं थी करने की। मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में, मोदी जी के निर्देशों पर पर्रिकर जी ने हमारी तीनों सेनाओं को वन रैंक वन पेंशन का तोहफा देने का काम। सीमा के रखवाले पूरी तरह आश्वस्त है कि मेरे परिवार की चिंता भारत सरकार कर रही है। वन रैंक वन पेंशन के लिए मोदी जी और पर्रिकर जी को युगों तक भारत याद करेगा।
The Chief of Army Staff, General M.M. Naravane, today met the Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapakse, and they discussed the exchanging the situation. They also discussed the existing defence cooperation between India and Sri Lanka and how it can be improved and enhanced. Earlier, Sri Lankan Prime Minister's office said that the positive interaction will help to cement bilateral relations between the two countries at all levels, including people-to-people connections. General Naravane is on a 5-day visit to strengthen bilateral military ties. The Indian Navy warships Satpura and Ranvijay, a submarine and a patrol aircraft, are wargaming with the US, Aussie and Japanese navies in the Bay of Bengal. The joint drills of the Malabar Phase 2 will conclude tomorrow, and the first phase was held at the end of August in the Western Pacific, and this is the 25th edition of the Malabar drills. As per the Navy statement, these exercises, they are reflective of the effort of the participating nations towards a free and open Indo-Pacific. As part of the ongoing Indo-US Defense Cooperation Joint Military Training Exercise, Youth Abhyas 2021 will be conducted at Alaska in the US. This will happen from the 15th to the 29th of October, and the contingent comprises 350 personnel of an infantry battalion group. It's left for the US. The exercise Youth Abhyas is the largest running joint military training and defense cooperation endeavor between India and the United States. This will be the 17th edition of these joint exercises, and they are hosted alternatively between the two countries. The exercise, it aims at enhancing understanding, cooperation, interoperability between the two armies. And the exercise, in fact, the joint exercise, it's going to focus this time on the combined armed maneuvers in cold conditions, in cold climatic conditions. The primary aim is to share tactical level drills and learn the best practices from each other. And Nandita Dagar now joins us with more on these stories. Well, Nandita, we can see that the armed forces are cooperating at levels on the sea as well as, in the ice, one would think, basically getting to know each other and working towards sharing the best practices. One can ask, what's the big aim?
Yes, the big aim is China in both the cases. Mark, you correctly mentioned that in your anchor link that the Indian troops are exercising with the American troops in Alaska. Alaska at this time of the year is, even at this time of the year, is icy. And remember, Mark, that our troops are in for a winter of altitude at the LAC on the heights which are above 18,000 feet. So winter warfare is nothing new to India. For more than 35 years we have been positioned on the heights of the Siachen Glacier and also guarding the frontiers with our western neighbor with Pakistan along the LOC and the international border. So winter is nothing new, but this time again, as we have seen that the 13th round of talks have broken down, and of course there will be more rounds of communication between the military commanders on the LAC. It is expected that there will not be a headway till the end of this year. So considering that what is snow warfare or ice warfare or warfare in very cold high altitudes, that is something that we will learn from the Americans. The Americans will learn a thing or two from us, because we are also pretty good at maintaining and manning these heights and in pretty adverse conditions where the wind chill factor goes down to -40 degrees Celsius in these heights, in barren cold deserts such as the deserts of Kailash ranges, or be it the icy glaciers of Siachen. When you talk about the sea, we have in fact spoken about this on air in the past week or so a lot, especially with the visit of Admiral Gilday, who is the Navy chief of US, who is currently also on a visit to India. And these Malabar exercises, the press releases cannot be as candid as we can. So reporters have the luxury of being candid, which press spokespersons do not. And that is why when they say that they are for an open, inclusive, free Indo-Pacific, what they mean is the South China Seas, where 2/3 of the world's trade passes through the South China Sea and the East China Sea. India is key to the US's strategy of containing China. And I remember, Mark, the Australians are engaged in a in a trade war with the Chinese. The Japanese are in dispute with the Chinese over Senkaku or Diageo Islands. The Indians, of course, we have tensions with them, a standoff with them at the LAC. The Americans are in a new Cold War, a battle for supremacy, the great power competition. So it's natural for all these four countries to join together and hold Malabar. Malabar are very old exercises. They've grown in complexity over the years. They began in 1992, but now Australia has also joined voluntarily, and so you can just see that this is
Absolutely.
encircling of China.
Nandita, you know, talking about joining voluntarily, now it looks like it's a pact of the Quad, but it's actually not a pact of the Quad. You've talked about it being, you know, an old exercise starting in 1992. It was just India and the US at that time. Then we had Japan joining, and now Australia. But there's an opportunity for others to join as well, who have interest in the Indo-Pacific. France, for instance.
Yes, Mark, that's very incisive of you. It is actually not the Quad. It's incidental that the Quad nations' navies are part of the Malabar. But Malabar was never, the Quad in fact gained momentum only in 2020 when the foreign ministers met of the Quad nations, foreign ministers met in Tokyo, and this year in February our Prime Minister along with the other leaders of the Quad held a meeting by video conferencing, and then of course the summit meeting in September in Washington, which was a physical meeting for the first time of the Quad leaders. So Quad has gained momentum only in the last 2 years.
Yes.
But Malabar, as you know, they are exercises which began with with Indo-US participation. Japan was added in 2000. You know, Japan was a partner who used to be on a temporary basis. Some years the Japanese used to join us and some years not. But Japan was made a permanent partner when Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government came to power. When Shinzo Abe was the Prime Minister of Japan, and Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Abe had a very good camaraderie and a very good rapport, and that's when this Japan became a permanent member of the Malabar. So Malabar is quite different from Quad. It's just incidental that the Quad members are also members of the Malabar.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Nandita Dagar, for those inputs. Moving on then to our next story. President Nath Kovind today arrived in Leh. He was accorded a Guard of Honor at the airport. President, who's on a 2-day visit to Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir, from today will celebrate Dasara this year with the soldiers of the Indian Army in Ladakh's Dras area. He'll do so on Friday, and he will pay tributes at the Kargil War Memorial in Dras and interact with officers and Jawans at Kargil. President Nath Kovind also performed the Sindhu Darshan Puja at the Sindhu Ghat in Leh, and in the evening he will travel to the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, interacting with the Indian troops stationed at Udhampur, the Northern Command headquarters of the Army. Now some updates about the vaccination drive in our country. Well, the COVID-19 vaccination coverage is now close to 97 crores, a huge figure. Cumulatively, over 96 crore 82 lakh beneficiaries have been inoculated so far. And on the 271st day of this vaccination drive, that happened on Wednesday, 347 vaccine doses were administered on that day. All private and government schools for students of class 9 to 12 are reopening in Ladakh's Leh district from today onwards. So the heads of the schools, they have been asked to follow strict COVID-19 standard operating procedures for safety of the students as well as the staff. The schools were recently shut because of the increase in COVID-19 cases among students. Meanwhile, the schools, colleges, hostels, they are to reopen with 50% capacity. All students, teachers, heads of staff, wardens and other employees will have to go through a mandatory RT-PCR test, and only those with negative reports will be allowed to enter or to stay in the hostels or residential schools. Other states like Maharashtra and Karnataka have also reopened schools for all classes across the states. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has wished the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, a speedy recovery. Dr. Manmohan Singh was admitted to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi on Wednesday evening. This is after he complained of weakness following a fever. Earlier, the Union Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia visited the former Prime Minister and inquired about his health from the doctors treating him. The Health Minister also wished Dr. Manmohan Singh a speedy recovery. The 89-year-old Congress veteran leader was admitted to a private ward in the Cardio-Neuro Center of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and is under the care of a team of cardiologists led by Dr. Nitish Nayak. This is Midday Prime on DD India, and now it's time for news and updates from the world of business. And it's time for Tanvi to take over and tell us what's happening in the world of business.
Thank you, Mark. Up first in Business Prime, updates from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's week-long trip to the United States, where she will meet U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen today as part of the next round of India Economic and Financial Partnership EFP meet. The 8th meeting of the U.S.-India Economic and Financial Partnership will be held with the chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, Jeremy Powell, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, and Governor Shaktikant Das of the Reserve Bank of India, RBI. Yellen will host the next round of the meet with Finance Minister Sitharaman on the sidelines of the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The U.S. Department of Treasury said in a statement that this meeting is focused on the recent momentum in the U.S.-India relationship. It will address a range of critical issues, including economic recovery from the global pandemic, climate financing, multilateral priorities, and financial regulation. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Wednesday addressed the roundtable organized by US-India Business Council and Confederation of Indian Industry in Washington, D.C. The roundtable was attended by CEOs and business leaders from insurance, private equity, technology, energy, and pharma sectors, among others. The government's initiatives towards business reforms like creation of institutional framework in CBM, NMP, work towards investment charter, and a spectrum of other opportunities at IFSC, Gift City, Gujarat were mentioned during the roundtable. The finance minister underlined the company's interest to invest in India. During her visit, the finance minister held meetings with other business leaders. The finance minister met Chief Financial Officer of the Carlyle Group, Curtis L. Busser, in Washington, D.C. Initiatives like National Monetization Pipeline, recently launched National Infrastructure Master Plan Gati Shakti, and a spectrum of opportunities at Indian Financial System Code, IFSC, Gujarat International Finance Tech City were mentioned and discussed during the meet. The finance minister underlined the presence and performance of the company in India since 1998 and its keenness to invest in the coming years. She also met Milind Pant, CEO of Amway in Washington, D.C. The focus of the discussion ranged in areas of research and development, manufacturing automation, innovation, and nutrition segment. Important initiatives by the government towards healthcare reforms like R&D medical science, health and well-being, and the growing opportunities at IFSC, Gujarat International Finance Tech City were also discussed. The finance minister underlined the company's interest to invest in India in the coming years. Further, the finance minister met with Novak's CEO Stanley C. Erck in Washington, D.C. The finance minister also met Chief Strategy Officer of Boeing, B. Mark Allen in Washington, D.C. The discussion was broadly in the areas of skilling, research and development, manufacturing automation, innovation, and the aerospace sector. Initiatives like the National Infrastructure Pipeline, National Monetization Pipeline NMP, recently launched National Infrastructure Master Plan Gati Shakti, and a spectrum of opportunities were mentioned. The finance minister underlined Boeing's collaboration in Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative and the interest of the company to invest in India in the coming years. And now, shifting our attention to the domestic stock market news. Well, both the BSE, Sensex and the Nifty have again surged to fresh record intraday highs on Thursday. The Sensex at the BSE crossed the 61,000 mark for the first time ever to a new lifetime intraday peak of 61,216. Later, after the Sensex was still up a good 447 points, or 0.7% at 61,184 in afternoon deals a short while ago. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange hit a new lifetime intraday peak of 18,323. Later, the Nifty was up 150 points, or 0.8% at 18,312. Talking about the broader market now, the BSE mid-cap and small-cap indices had gained 0.6% each. Talking about the top index gainers on the BSE so far, they are Wipro, Adani Ports, Grasim and Tech Mahindra with gains of between 3.1 and 7.1%. The top index losers are Coal India, Eicher Motors, IndusInd Bank, Tata Motors with losses of between 1.1 and 3.6%. Elsewhere, other key Asian markets have also gained ground on Thursday, even as investors reckoned on inflation bringing forward rate hikes around the world. Overnight, economic data showed another solid increase in US consumer prices, while minutes from the last month's US Federal Reserve or central bank meeting showed growing concern of policymakers about inflation and a general agreement to start tapering asset purchases soon. So traders responded by bringing forward rate hike expectations but lowering the projected peak. So MSCI's broadest index of Asia Pacific shares outside Japan gained 0.4%. Japan's Nikkei 225 index had surged 1.5%. South Korea's Kospi index jumped 1.5%. But China's Shanghai Composite Index was trading flat. Hong Kong stock market was closed for a holiday. Back home, let's tell you how the interbank forex market is doing today. The rupee had appreciated 12 paise against the dollar in opening trade on Thursday, lifted by surging domestic stock markets and fresh foreign fund inflows. Later, in afternoon deals, the rupee was still up 10 paise at 75 rupees 26 paise against the dollar. At the multi-commodity exchange, gold and silver are trading higher in afternoon deals. The precious yellow metal was up 44 rupees at 47,960 rupees per 10 grams. Silver, on the other hand, strengthened 323 rupees at 63,210 rupees per kilo. So with that, we wrap up Business Prime segment for today. For other news coming in, let's go back to Mark. Mark, over to you.
Thanks very much, Tanvi. Wow, 61,000, the Sensex, huge. Let's move on then to the news that's coming in from across the world. So in international news, the World Health Organization has proposed 26 experts to form its new scientific advisory group. This is for the origin of SAGO. This is of the novel pathogens to probe the source of SARS-CoV-2 virus, that's COVID. And the proposal of 26 members, it comes ahead of a 2-week period of public consultation.
SAGO will advise WHO on the development of a global framework to define and guide studies into the origins of emerging and re-emerging pathogens with epidemic and pandemic potential, including SARS-CoV-2. There will now be a 2-week public consultation period for WHO to receive feedback on the proposed SAGO members, following which the composition of SAGO will be confirmed and the group will have its first meeting. The emergence of new viruses with the potential to spark epidemics and pandemics is a fact of nature. And while SARS-CoV-2 is the latest such virus, it will not be the last.
Well, the WHO's top emergency expert Mike Ryan said that SAGO may be the last chance to establish the origin of SARS-CoV-2.
That is a human endeavor to understand a virus that has stopped our whole world. And I would ask everyone, countries, journalists, and everybody else, to create a little space for that discussion to happen. Because this is probably, right now, this is our best chance. And it may be our last chance to understand the origins of this virus in a collegiate, collective, and mutually responsible way.
Well, that discussion is happening on DD India in our program BioQuest. Now let's move on to our next story. Japan has dissolved its parliament, setting the stage for an election on the 31st of October that will pit new Prime Minister Fumio Kishida against unpopular opposition. Being in the job for 11 days, Kishida enjoys a reasonable public support and it bodes well for him, as his goal is to maintain a lower house majority with his Liberal Democratic Party and its Comito Party coalition partner. But the voters are hoping for a government with plans for a decisive action to end this pandemic and to rebuild the economy. Kishida's party is promoting his push for the coronavirus measures, including supplying oral antiviral medication this year, as well as his vision for realizing a new capitalism that focuses on economic growth and redistribution of wealth. In Norway, at least 5 people have been killed and 2 more injured after a man used a bow and arrow to attack them. The incident happened in the town of Kongsberg, southwest of the capital Oslo, on Wednesday evening. The attacker had been apprehended and a large-scale investigation has been launched. Kongsberg police chief said that the police would investigate whether the attack amounted to an act of terror. Following the attacks, the police directorate said that it had immediately ordered the officers nationwide to carry firearms. The Norwegian police are normally unarmed, but the officers they have access to guns and rifles when they are required to have so. The US President Joe Biden has launched an effort to ease the supply chain blockages that are threatening to disrupt the US holiday season. Biden said that the port of Los Angeles would now join the port of Long Beach, 2 of the country's busiest, in expanding round-the-clock operations to unload an estimated 500,000 containers which are waiting on cargo ships offshore. And he further said that Walmart, Target and other big retailers, they would also expand their overnight operations at the port, and they will try to meet delivery targets and needs. The supply crisis is driven by, in part by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the sales of durable goods have jumped amid worker shortages as well as transportation hub slowdowns. The Hollywood actor William Shatner soared aboard a Blue Origin rocket ship on a suborbital trip and landed in the Texas desert on Wednesday to become, at the age of 90, the oldest person ever in space, as the US billionaire businessman Jeff Bezos' company carried out its second tourist flight. Shatner was one of 4 passengers to journey to the edge of space aboard the white, fully autonomous 60-foot tall New Shepard spacecraft, which took off from Blue Origin's launch site about 20 miles outside the rural West Texas town of Van Horn. Not quite the Starship Enterprise, however. But time now for sports stories from the world of sports. Samriddhi is there. Over to you, Samriddhi.
Well, thank you, Mark. Good afternoon and welcome to Sports Prime. Starting with cricket, IPL. In IPL, Kolkata Knight Riders set up the title clash with Chennai Super Kings after defeating Delhi Capitals in a last-over thriller in a qualifier 2 at Sharjah last night. Now put into bat, Delhi Capitals put up a score of 135 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in the stipulated 20 overs with the help of opener Shikhar Dhawan's 36 and Shreyas Iyer's not out 30 runs. For Kolkata, Varun Chakravarti took 2 wickets. In reply, Kolkata chased down the victory target of 136 runs for the loss of 7 wickets in 19.5 overs, riding on 96-run solid opening partnership of Venkatesh Iyer and Shubman Gill as they scored 55 and 46 respectively. With the fine bowling by Delhi's Anrik Nortje, Ravichandran Ashwin and Kagiso Rabada, who took 2 wickets each, Kolkata came under a lot of pressure. However, Rahul Tripathi hit a 6 off the penultimate ball of the match to seal Kolkata place in their 3rd final. Owen Morgan led Kolkata Knight Riders will lock horns with Mahendra Singh Dhoni led Chennai Super Kings in the final on Friday at Dubai. Well, in football, India reached the South Asian Football Federation SAF Championship final after beating defending champion Maldives 3-1 at Malé last night. Manveer Singh had given India the lead in the 33rd minute, but Ali Ashfaq scored a penalty to level to the tie before half-time. Later, India bounced back through their talisman, Sunil Chhetri, who smashed a loose ball shortly after the hour mark in the 62-minute. He then doubled his tally in 71-minute with a looping header. Seven-time champions India will now take on first-time finalist Nepal in the title match on Saturday. Captain Chhetri was the man of the match for helping India to qualify for the final of the competition for the 8th successive time. Now, Chhetri's 2 goals took him beyond Brazilian legend Pelé, and he is now just one short of Lionel Messi's goal tally of 80 international goals. India remained undefeated in this edition, having earlier played out draws with Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and then beating Nepal. Shardul Thakur has replaced Akshar Patel in India's squad for the T20 World Cup 2021. Akshar, meanwhile, joins the list of standby players for the squad, along with Shreyas Iyer and Deepak Chahar. The BCCI also said 8 players would additionally be joining the team's bubble in Dubai to assist Team India in their preparations for the tournament. Thakur has had a good IPL season with Chennai Super Kings, who finished second in the league and then won the first qualifier against Delhi Capitals to reach the final. He has picked up 13 wickets in the UAE leg of the tournament, joint third in the period. Thakur could slot into the seam bowling all-rounder role for the Indian team, currently with Hardik Pandya. However, Hardik did not bowl during the IPL, and if he is unable to do so in the T20 World Cup too, Thakur could be in the line to fill that void. Well, that's all from sports for now. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Samriddhi. And now it's time for our next segment, which is Live Prime. Sometimes we bring you stories from the world of art, culture, cinema, fashion, and stories that are bringing smiles to people's faces. Well, it's the 9th day of Navratri Puja in the Ashwina month of the Hindu calendar, and on the 9th day of Navratri, Mahanavami, the devotees worship Ma Siddhatri, the 9th manifestation of Ma Durga, and seek her blessings for their family and their loved ones. Mahanavami is the 3rd and final day of the Durga Puja. The festivities, they begin with Mahasnan, and this is one of the important pujas also that take place today. And on this day, Ma Durga is worshipped as the Mahishasura Mardini, as it is said that she made her final assault on the demon Mahishasura on this, which is the 9th day of the battle. And then on Vijay Dashmi, she triumphed over him. And in many parts of the country, Kanya Puja is celebrated on Ashtami and Navami, where 9 small girls, considered the 9 forms of Durga, of Goddess Durga, they are worshipped and they are offered prasad. Durga Puja festival is also being celebrated with much enthusiasm and religious fervor in Bangladesh. Devotees, they visit temples and pandals during this festival. They offer prayers to Goddess Durga. Kumari Puja, which is the main attraction of Mahaashtami, will not be held this year in the capital because of the COVID-19 pandemic situation. This is Bangladesh that we are talking about. And on that note, we conclude Midday Prime for today. Thank you very much for being with us. Namaskar.